Welcome back to another episode of the Nuance Pod. In today's episode, we'll be covering how AI companies are racing to control your creative workflow, creator agencies are collapsing faster than ever, and every platform wants to financialize your content. What do these trends have in common? They're all symptoms of the same problem. We're rebuilding the entire creator economy infrastructure in real time, and nobody knows who to trust anymore.
So there's been a lot that's happened over the last few weeks. I think a really good first topic for us, it's to really just chat a bit about the AI platform consolidation and the race for creator workflows. We recently saw OpenAI's leaked roadmap for 2025 into 26, and Perplexity seemingly kicking off Browser Wars Part 2. I think they recently put in an offer for, what was it, like $34.5 billion for Chrome, which is insane.
That's crazy. I mean, the amount of signing bonuses that I've been hearing, like 10-figure offers from Meta to OpenAI employees, it's getting pretty crazy.
Yeah, I really wonder at least how a lot of these companies are just going to be competing with another, or rather with each other, just because I like to think there's maybe not one clear winner, although I think every platform and every company has their own strengths and weaknesses. But yeah, it's kind of hard to tell. But I feel like there's probably maybe top 3 companies that are kind of competing for the same piece of the pie right now. But I'd like to think it's anyone's bet right now, just based off of like usership, how people are actually discovering a lot of these platforms, and then of course the actual use, right?
Yeah, I would say like gloves are definitely off. I don't know if you caught this, but on X a few days ago, you could see Elon versus Sam Altman just going head to head, just straight up calling each other, funny names. And even Elon they're accusing each other of like doing nefarious things. And then Sam Altman was saying, well, it's a skill issue that you are not getting as much engagement as we are. It's your platform, so.
Yeah,
so yeah,
everything's happening publicly, which is, I think, so interesting to watch.
You can tell that they all want to essentially, race to the finish line, be the monopoly on AI. And I think this is going to be like the main development over the rest of the year, I would say, definitely. And then going into 2026, these are like the main players just kind of going head to head directly. So, yeah.
So every major AI company is making the same bet right now. They want to own your entire creative process from idea to upload. And really, here's why that should scare you. OpenAI right now isn't just building chatbots anymore. They want to be in your pocket, maybe on your desk, maybe even walking around your house. I think I've seen companies like Google, Meta, and Apple, they're all kind of just racing to control your entire workflow, which has been more or less interesting. And this really isn't about making better tools. It seems to be more about platform dependency. And when one company handles your research, the scripting, the editing, and maybe even your distro, what happens when they decide to just change their terms or raise their prices, or they just decide they don't like your content anymore, right? And I really remember a lot when Google just killed every other search engine. That seems to be happening again, but with the actual creative tools. So the question isn't whether AI gets better at making content, it's whether creators will give up control over their workflows to these platforms. And for creators, this is either the ultimate productivity unlock, or it's just the beginning of creator dependency. And once you're dependent, you're not really independent anymore. So what does that all mean? It means the tools that you use to be more efficient today might actually make you irrelevant tomorrow. So choose wisely, right?
One of my main concerns with all of this that is playing out right now is, do you guys recall and remember back in the day when a lot of content creators realized that the algorithms were owned by these companies, and when we got to the point of like censorship for a lot of the content that just creators were essentially just making a livelihood out of, and then one day you realize that you essentially can't make your main type of content anymore for whatever reason. It's a big concern of mine where by having like these tools and being a like integral part of your workflow, one day you find out that they're blacklisting you from, uploading in the platforms that you want to upload because, they're a competitor, or you find yourself with your, I guess, AI agents or assistants or editors kind of censoring or trying to censor your content or trying to change it to fit certain narratives. So I think we could get to a place where creators almost start feeling a little bit more of like a cookie cutter template, as opposed to like, having their own unique spin. So it's something to think about for sure.
Yeah, I think it's also one of those things where I think if you really think about it, if you're giving platforms more control when they mess up, and I think that is more of an issue and matter of when, not if, you as a creator are ultimately the one that has to pay that price, right? It's almost like you're beholden to the platform in itself. Versus truly being able to express like creative freedom or even being consistent. And I think we've seen this from a lot of different incumbents where they've allowed you to effectively gain the algorithms. I mean, much like you're saying, there usually is like a template or a playbook that they can give you where it's kind of like, here are the basics of how to game our platform and how to succeed, right? But I think when it becomes too restrictive, like where does it truly end? And how do creators actually ultimately find sustainability? I think just the focus for them to introduce hardware and even just their latest acquisition of, who is it, like John Ivey, right? Mm-hmm. And working with him to develop potentially new product lines. I think that's a game changer for a lot of different reasons, just because we do see the robotic side of AI kind of playing out, and I think a lot more investment and focus in this area. But I think for a specific platform themselves to build all that in-house, it's like the walled garden effect where you see most other products and large-scale companies investing. And usually they become the bigger and major players of the space, right? Once you own the distribution and the production means, like you own everything.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I'm actually really surprised. And I think even like you said, when we were first speaking about this, you mentioned how OpenAI were also surprised how their like main product became like this portal ChatGPT where people are essentially just like prompting, I guess I would say like very primitive model. I'm pretty sure they have something behind the scenes that is like much more powerful and perhaps to power some sort of robot, a wearable. But the other thing that surprised me is like, if you told me that like there's a reality where instead of ChatGPT, OpenAI made a browser that looked to kill, let's say, like a Google or, Firefox or whatever, powered by AI. I thought that would be much more in their court. The fact that they just have like this domain that people go to a portal, it has a lot of users, but AI-powered browser would have been much more up their street. And it looks like Perplexity might have beat them to it. So we'll see what they come up with, but it has to be something big, right? If they want to be one of the leaders in AI, they kind of have to make their mark.
Yeah, I do like that maybe prediction, just because like, I think even when we look at platforms like a YouTube, where back in the day, a lot of people felt like it was just a video platform, but it certainly evolved over time to, in itself become a search engine, right? It's like people were looking up tutorial videos. How do I do this on Photoshop? How do I cook this, etc.? I also wonder, at least from the platform Agentic side, integrating it with browsers, like who's to say that beyond just being a chatbot, you do have all these really specific integrations that kind of help not just your workflow, but discovery and all these other different mechanisms that help you succeed. And perhaps that becomes like a larger product where, I think there's this one company called like Friend, right? Like, I think it's just like a wearable piece of technology where it kind of takes the place of like your companion, and like you can talk to it much like you talk to Siri or Gemini or any other voice AI agent. But it kind of seems like that's the pace at which platforms can start evolving into. And I think that's probably the more exciting thing for me to see beyond just, oh, there's another, chat wrapper that launched, right?
Yeah, I completely agree. Let's see. So in terms of predictions, I think they'll definitely come out with some sort of, if they're not going after, I guess, software, they're probably going to come out with some sort of hardware. They might be trying to compete with Apple before we know it. So we'll see, I suppose.
For our second topic, it's around creators needing to do a due diligence checklist. And it's specifically about VShojo, one of the primary VTuber agencies that made headlines recently when one of their most popular streamers, Iron Mouse, suddenly announced her departure from the company, alleging she was owed a significant sum. And for those that aren't familiar with VTubers, they're virtual avatar creators that make up one of the largest segments for revenue and viewership in the space. And that announcement sparked VShojo's founder, Gunrun, who used to work at Twitch, to put out a post saying they failed, but it brings into question a consistent theme about management and creators.
One of the main reasons I think this one blew up is because, I would say like this happens often in the creator management space where they face issues with, various parties. But the particular reason why this one blew up is because actually this was, I believe, $500,000 at the back of a charity stream that essentially this VTuber agency kind of used as like liquid funds to essentially just like pay for running the company. In hopes of raising additional funding, they were actually using content creator revenue, in this case charity funding, to kind of just keep going day to day. But this obviously paints a larger picture as to why creators really need to know and should protect themselves when essentially signing deals or contracts.
I think that's also one of the more common things that you and I have run into, right? Working with a lot of different types of creators in different industries. I think one of the main things that we tell them up front is always read what you sign. Like, I understand there's like a lot of legal jargon and language that may not make sense, but it's just helpful, at least from the creator portion, to really understand like the fine languages. And you can certainly sit down with like your counsel or legal representative to kind of get the main points, but I think we've just seen so many instances where they just did not read the fine print. Because at the end of the day, if you want things to be enforceable and, hopefully you don't ever have to take someone, to court using the agreement that you signed, but at least you have a good understanding of what's allowed, what isn't, what your options are when you do run into trouble, right? So I want to say a lot of people don't really pay attention to or maybe even bring up. And perhaps that's just maybe some of the seediness that happens behind the scenes. But yeah, I'd like to think transparency is one of those things where you just really have to be selective, but also, again, understand what you're signing, because you ultimately are signing your life away to a third party, right?
So Noah, what are some of the red flags that creators should look out for when negotiating or signing management deals?
Yeah, I mean, after seeing a lot of this just collapse, I want to say what every creator should try to look out for when signing agreements. It's probably 5 main questions just to ask up front, right? First is how they handle things when opportunities dry up. The main thing you're searching for here is, are they going to stick around when things get tough? Second, what's their track record? And it's not necessarily about like follower growth, but actual money. How much have they generated for clients in the last 12 months? If they can't or won't share those numbers, chances are they don't have good ones. Third, who owns what? Content, your brand partnerships, your IP, get that all in writing, because when agencies go under, they take everything they legally can with them. Fourth, what happens when this ends? Most contracts have terrible termination clauses. You should know exactly what you owe them and for how long if they decide to leave. And the last one, which may be a really important one, is can you talk to their other clients? Not really talking about testimonials on their website or digital properties they control, actual phone or video calls with creators they currently represent. If they won't provide you that, kind of just have to wonder, like, what are they hiding, right? So at the end of the day, having representation or management can really accelerate your career, but with someone bad, it can destroy it. So definitely do the work up front.
One of the ways I think could help in the future would be crypto and blockchain helping creators actually safely be able to transact and get paid after delivering their deliverables, right? And I believe we kind of saw an early version of this back in the day when we were still working at gaming and esports, which was a company that used to escrow contracts and services, which after a creator would complete their deliverables, contract would be marked as complete. The funds would automatically be approved and sent straight to their wallet. That's actually one of the major issues with gaming and esports, which is always these invoices that seemingly never get paid, and you have to follow up for months and months on end sometimes. And sometimes, you don't even get the money. So yeah, I think looking forward, crypto and blockchain might actually help in the creator space. So that's something to look forward to.
Our final topic, we've seen on-chain companies really pushing for paying out and incentivizing creators to use their platform. Base and Zora are probably the most notable ones being pushed on the timeline right now, given them just opening it up a few weeks ago. And we're seeing a lot of prominent people like Koopa, Jesse, and a few others really promoting it. Personally, I think here's what I earned on this platform versus TikTok or IG is a bit problematic. Mainly, it's on one side, you have platforms that have already found product market fit. So of course, payouts are unevenly distributed, but it really discounts when these platforms started about a decade plus ago, right? Like they actually paid out. And people seem to forget platforms have to incentivize creators to post and get paid because their user base and the economics that support it are in the infancy stage where it's hundreds versus millions. So of course you're going to get paid out more. It's not really a flex in my opinion to say that a platform is better. So it's a bit disingenuous, I think, to double down on a lot of that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Every platform wants to turn your content into a financial instrument. I mean, we've seen this throughout history, social media. As soon as monetization came out on YouTube and across other socials, the incentives were there, right, for the creators. One thing to keep in mind is these platforms, they would be nothing without the content, right? If there was no YouTube videos, if there were no TikToks, then YouTube and TikTok wouldn't exist, right? If there were no creators uploading onto these platforms, it wouldn't exist. So I think similarly in Web3, this seems to be the current meta with some of the platforms essentially saying, we're actually rewarding creators here. Come, and we will take care of you. I think at a face level, that's a little bit disingenuous because, most creators can get paid across any platforms. I mean, look, even for the infamous CT, crypto Twitter, creators are eating well. KOLs, influencers, they're eating well off the Twitter paychecks like every 2 weeks, right? They can get subscribers too, just like on Twitch, just like on YouTube. So yeah, it just seems that the platforms aren't really pushing this to optimize for creator success. They're actually optimizing for transaction volume, right? I actually also think that is something that creators should really take into consideration before signing on to these platforms. A good example of this that happened the other day, which was with, I believe his name is Jack Butcher, the founder behind Visualize Value. He literally wanted to try out the base app. He signed up. To log in, you need to log in through like your Forecaster account. And as soon as he logged in, it automatically made a coin. And of course, a lot of people that pay attention to these coins, these memes, they immediately saw Visualize Value launch a ticker, right? So the next thing he said is like he was just waking up, signed up, and all of a sudden he had like 100 messages. He was like, what's going on? And boom, like a friend of him saying, yo, did you just launch a coin? And he was like, no, I literally just logged into this to Base app. And, so all of a sudden the coin was live and, he made a bunch of revenue. But of course, we all know the reason people buy is because they think it's official and he's going to, promote it and endorse it and whatnot. So he kind of made it very clear that this wasn't actually the case, and token kind of like lost momentum after that. But that paints a good picture, right?
Coinbase, rather the Base app, posted your content, your value, your upside, posted on the Base app, and I think there was like a very specific line that they had written where it's can't really earn unless you have like massive followings or large brand deals. My take on that though is like your mileage will vary, because I don't think this really accounts for how often someone can go viral to get those numbers to be a specific number to pay out. Ultimately, it's a sustainability issue, right? I think to start, and a lot of brands and products are figuring out the cold start problem. Yes, like you have to incentivize people. That's what Uber did. That's what a bunch of these other early stage companies did to get that user base up and running, right? To start that flywheel. But I think what maybe a lot of people, whether that is on CT or just more generally, forget is not all content is actually like valuable, right? In the same ways that everyone thinks that they can be a photographer. To be honest, like when I look at some of these pictures that are either posted, and I feel like I can at least to some degree have this as a valid thought because I've managed one of the largest, photo Instagram accounts on the planet, EarthPix, right? And worked with a lot of different professional photographers and content creators to post. At the end of the day, when I would see the submissions of people wanting to have their work highlighted, and you compare that with other professional photographers or people that actually have an artistic eye, like not a lot of people actually have an artistic eye. Therein, I think you see the natural order of why some photos succeed more so than others. And it's because of things like having a true understanding of the mechanics of like what is a good composition. That same point for content, it's the exact same thing. Some mid-curve take may actually just be mid-curve, right? And the analysis might not be good, or your shit post probably isn't as funny as you think it might be. So I think in that same very way, where if we're pointing out an app that can reward you or incentivize you and pay you out, like not all content is created equal.
I think you said it really well. Innovation is good, but not every creator needs to be a financial engineer. A good example of this is, think of it this way. A large majority of all of the content creators we know and love, they started making content because they just simply wanted to make that content before all this monetization stuff came around. All of our favorite YouTubers, gaming YouTubers, streamers, they were just streaming for the love of the game. And nowadays, I think it's turning around the other way, 180, where a lot of people just want to make content or become a content creator to make money. And I think that's the part where it's like, if it's for the wrong reasons, it probably isn't most likely ever going to be good content. Of course, when people perfect their craft, work on it day on day, provide value, they're always going to improve and get better and better. But yeah, I think when it comes to the CT space in particularly, I've seen a lot of people that are literally there just to try and figure out how to, grow their account to make money. And it's almost like the point of a content creator is when you're good at making content, the money is a byproduct of giving value to the world, not the other way around. So, yeah.
So for creator coins, which I want to say is more or less in the domain of, creating content and being incentivized or rewarded for it. Like I certainly know the implications behind creator coins and of course the reception beyond just the CT crowd. When you think about just lay people or the general public, everyone always sees that, that chart that goes like 99% down. Right? And I know Ben had recently tweeted, creator coins would be far more compelling if their value was determined by the attention on the creator rather than attention on the creator's coin. But I think, again, therein lies a problem because you're kind of fighting against human nature, right? And I think this space is probably a bit more guilty than any other space in being extractive because people can, and they can hide behind anonymity. They can kind of steal away with a certain amount of wealth and really not be responsible for any of the repercussions that, normal people or the public generally face doing a specific action. Right? It's really hard to decouple those two because of this idea that you potentially could gamble on something and make a lot of money. It's really hard, I think, for people to separate that, no matter like what your intentions are, if they're pure, if they're not. Like it's really hard just based off of what people are seeing. They're seeing a number on the screen. And once that number gets big enough, I'd like to think everyone has a price.
I think there's a really obvious example of this for creators in our space, which is Pump Fun. Pump Fun, they want to compete with Twitch, YouTube, TikTok as a streaming platform, right? and the only way to stream is to launch a coin. So it's like, it's kind of, it's kind of like ridiculous, but at least they're not trying to like, dance around it. They're just straight up like, we only care about your content if we can like monetize it, right? And I feel like that's basically every platform in the world, but at least they're, not trying to beat around the bush. So if anything, they're like being the most honest about it.
Ultimately, I think we want this to succeed, right? In any shape or form that benefits creators, that benefits people, but it certainly has to come with the right mechanisms and the right, intent. Just because I'd like to think there's so many ways that it could go sideways or wrong. But at the end of the day, it is always finding, I think for us in the business that we're in, finding really sustainable revenue sources for creators to, be in business. Like, and they should definitely be rewarded for their creativity and their content. That's one of the primary reasons I think a lot of creators want to put something out there, but it certainly isn't the primary thing.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if in the future, as the creator economy develops and, we have more AI weaved in or more blockchain weaved in, I think there will be ways in which audiences or fans can support creators in a decentralized way, as in like literally supporting them straight into their wallet and essentially cutting out a lot of these platforms, being the middleman. And I bet you that will also be a huge point of friction in terms of these platforms literally trying for that not to happen. That's the world we live in, right? I guess
we'll see where it goes.